Hi guys, welcome back. Actually been wanting to do this one for a while. Photo from Pixabay again. And I just kind of love the entire vibe of it. I am probably going to finish this one in Photoshop. Because the only thing I could see, or what I've had in my mind I should say for finishing it, is adding some glow to it. I do it every now and then. And I will keep the video going once I pull it into Photoshop so that you see what I mean. But a while ago I did a tutorial from Angel Ganov. He's had more than one tutorial, but this is the one that really stood out to me. It was adding glow to a black and white photo. Or graphite photo, basically. And like I said, I just loved the idea of it. I don't do a lot with digital art any longer. Most of my stuff is traditional. They're just plain graphite or painted. But every now and then I get inspired to try to stretch myself a little bit. Those never stop learning things. And I take that to heart. Sometimes I wish I'd put a little bit more effort into learning digital art, but it's just something about putting pencil to paper. And the beauty of putting pencil to paper is you don't really need any expensive supplies to do it. And I say this knowing that I'm super picky about which pencils I use for what and what paper I prefer. Although paper does actually change by mood. Because sometimes I enjoy drawing on a very textured paper. But most of the time I use Bristol vellum, just a smooth paper. For the pictures I do here, I honestly just buy a ream of white cardstock. It's just very smooth and it works for me. commissions I'll get done on better quality paper, but for the fast ones that I do, these are more like practices. Because I tend to work fast, I don't always explore all of the different techniques that I've spent time trying to learn. At least on film. I've gotten back to doing a lot more off film. And I just realized that the camera wasn't really set for her hair. So I apologize for that. Got all these sounds and not seeing anything at all. Go for just laying out all the rest of her hair here. And once we get a nice smooth base over this, go add in some of the details. Going in here with a bit of a harder line, blending it out. I'm going to get her hand done first. And the orange, just because it's left hand side of the paper and I want to draw over just as little as possible of the graphite from the other areas. We all know I'm very good at smearing things. freshen some of this out. Give it a little bit of a smoother blend. That brush doesn't want to work. Not so much not work as I don't really have enough loose graphite to actually pick up and move around. The brushes that I use are really soft, so one of the short bristles that I use for more detailed stuff is a really soft brush, so because it's small, it doesn't retain a lot of the graphite from other things I do. Like this brush, big, soft, fluffy, and because I had it dipped in powder before, if I press a little bit harder, there's usually some residue left in there. I mean, unless it's freshly cleaned, which it's not. It never lays down a lot, but it just gets me out of base work. Looks like the smudge stick is what I needed for here. But that's why I start with the softest blender in my arsenal and move up gradually. Once you get the dark tones on, it's hard to step it back. So you build up gradually to those dark tones. That is something that I've had to learn rather painfully, because I used to go in all guns blazing and try to hit the tones that I wanted from the start. And then when I realized I'd gone too far, it was really hard to step it back. And I'd watched enough tutorials by this point that I knew I should be taking more time and working up gradually, but I am impatient and that's why these kind of speed draws suit me, because if I try to take longer on a picture, I really either overwork it or just get bored and abandon it. Which is funny, because there is something, I think as I grow older, I realize the value of just taking the time and sinking into yourself. I'm not good at it, really. It's not with drawing. I have different, I want to call them Zen exercises that I do to try and maintain inner peace. I am prone to depression and anxiety, so finding things that soothe is very helpful. And sometimes I can sink into it with the shading, sometimes I can't. So over time I've adapted how I focus on my work to what works for me, which I mean everybody needs to do for themselves. Because I would highly recommend not necessarily meditation, but a meditative practice. When I'm doing art for the sake of art and not on video, I can sink into it a lot more because, let's face it, when you're doing art like this on video, I have a specific goal in mind, and also I'm talking, so I have to kind of keep in mind what I'm saying, how I'm saying it, which can be disastrous at times because I do lose my trains of thought quite often. Because I do fall into meditative feel of just the repetitive motion. It is a very good way to lose yourself in the moment. If you don't draw or something like this to get into that mindset, there's all kinds of different things that you can do. I mean, coloring books are a really big one because you can't just let your mind go. I know some people that use driving as a meditative exercise, but even though I don't live in a big city, it's big enough that I would not call it meditative to drive. You gotta keep way too alert. Of course, I grew up in the country in a very rural area, so I had to stay pretty alert then too. Never knew when a deer or a bear was going to come out onto the road. So I never really understood the appeal of meditative driving. But I know a lot of people do go for long drives to clear their mind. More power to them. I find it more stressful than anything. And if I do slip into a meditative state while driving, I always worry about it because it's like, wait, how did I get here? The last clear thought I had was miles ago. So it never seems meditative, but always more dissociative. And as I can sometimes have a problem with dissociation, well, it's not something to encourage for me. But other meditative things, I mean, I find carving incredibly zen, if you will. Just falling into the strokes of the knife blade. Also, things like crochet or needlework. I count this because most of the needlework I do requires a pattern, so I can't really let go. I have to more or less stay on task, because the second I let go, I end up frogging a whole my pattern. But if it's a simple pattern, like just a repetitive squares or I'm doing a blanket with just a straight blanket with not much of a pattern or a very repetitive pattern. Those to me work better than anything I have to actually focus on. Some eyelashes would probably help her, or eyebrows, excuse me. I already gave her lashes. Absolutely unsure about the mouth here. This is part of the reason I chose to do this particular picture too, because the model does have a large gap between her front teeth, and for the most part I don't draw people with their teeth showing. Just But like I said earlier, how am I going to grow if I don't actually step out of that comfort zone? So some days that's all I want is to draw a nice casual picture that doesn't have anything too challenging to it. And some days I just want to try more. So today we're going to try more and see how that works out for me. course, I mentioned earlier about not going in so dark right away, and I completely disregard that here. I am not always good at following my own advice. Or following what I know would work actually better. But those things when you're not quite sure of what you're doing. I say you, but I mean me. I tend to go in a little too hard, trying to pin down the shapes, which is actually absolutely not the best way to draw. You want to gradually draw the shapes out, not blast the face with them. And surprisingly, it kind of worked out in this case, because when I compare what I'm drawing on the screen, when I say on the screen because I'm using OBS and my drawing is on my computer screen right next to the reference image this is based on. It's actually looking pretty close, which I'm always surprised when stuff comes out looking close to what I want it to. And for this one, I didn't really change it a lot from the reference image, simply because I'm planning on finishing it with a glow and just trying to get not too many things at the same time. Okay. And now to finish the other half of her face. Now we just need to finish the last bits of her hair. And she'll be done for this portion. We'll pop her into Photoshop and finish her up. blend all this in. Some shadows. Alright, I won't forget the highlights. Okay, so at this point she is mostly done. At least the state that I call done. When you're doing a portrait in under an hour, there's a lot that can be improved on, don't get me wrong. But for all intents and purposes, she is ready to move on to the next stage. Just as soon as Okay, and we are back. This is actually for the second time because the first time it didn't actually unpause, so I went through all of this. But that is okay, because now I know exactly what I need to do without as much fumbling around. So first thing we're going to do, we've just scanned her in, and I'm going to cut the picture down to fit the actual image. Maybe take a little bit off here and there. Okay, I do have an action to run through to desaturate, so it's just going to bump everything up a little bit. And we're going to smooth her out. So we've got a brush set to a fairly low opacity. Get the right head on here. I'm just going to pick up some of the color. And this is just meant to give me a smoother surface to work on. Plus correcting any of the little issues that might have I might not have noticed when I was doing the original. Just darkening some things up, lightening some things up. It's just smoothing her out. Drop that down. Yes, it's a lot of work with the color picker right now. Because I want a smooth blend, not to actually color anything at this point. I'm just blending things out, evening them up, not trying to add a lot of new stuff at this point. The adding will come in a moment. That particular area should have been darker. And now it is. Okay, so we're going to move on to the tutorial itself, which, or I should say the information that I got from the tutorial, which is, wasn't sure if those marks were on the paper or because my screen is dirty. It does tell me I really need to clean my scanner bed again. There, she's all smoothed out. So now what we're going to do is add another layer on top of this. That's not what we should have done first, but that's what I did. We're going to go into adjustments, and we're going to do the levels. We're looking at the output levels, and because I know exactly what to take it down to this time, take it down to 200. And then I'm going to correct this little dark smudge here, because that was really bothering me. Now, on the upper layer, I'm going to change the blend mode, and I'm putting it in linear light. And the only reason I know that's the one I want is, like I said, I did this before. We're going to grab a nice orange color and swap to a different brush tip. This particular brush is called Highlights. It's the artist that I mentioned before, Angel Ganov. It is one of his brushes. He has a brush set available. If you go check out his tutorials at his site, you can see he's got some free brushes up. But what we're going to do here is paint in some of the orange. We're not doing the whole orange, just doing some highlights. I'm going to put a little mark in her eye too, just where it's going to reflect that orange. Then I'm going to take white and do the same thing. I'm also going to whiten the highlight in her eye. And there you go. We have a girl with an orange. And obviously you can merge those layers down. And that's the finished product. So thank you so much for watching today. I really appreciate you, and have a great day.